Hello, and thanks so much for joining us. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America, and my guest today is Leah Johnson, the award-winning children and young adult author of You Should See Me in a Crown, owner of Loudmouth Bookstore, and editor of Black Girl Power, an anthology filled with stories on joy, friendship, celebrating Black girlhood by 15 authors. It's published under Disney's new Freedom Fire imprint, and you're going to tell us all about all of that.
Yeah.
Leah, welcome to Black America.
Thank you for having me.
I love absolutely everything you're doing.
Thank you. I'm feeling pretty fond of the things that I get to do too, actually. So,
except that you're finishing up the book tour and you'd like to go back to bed.
Listen, this has worn me down, but I'm excited to talk about this book with you.
That's great. That's great. Well, the reason I emphasize Loudmouth Bookstore is that there are so few people who come to the conclusion that bookstores need to be open. So I want to start with that, actually.
Yeah.
And this is in Indianapolis, Indiana. As I said, I'd love to see it. I'd love to come to it.
What's going to get you there? What are we going to do to get you there? That's what we got to figure out.
I know. So I will come directly there to see the bookstore. Tell me about that first.
So I opened Loudmouth in September of last year. We had seen in 2022 and 2023 more books being banned in the United States than we'd ever seen before. And so as I saw my books being banned, I saw so many of my friends' books being pulled off of shelves, I thought if ever there was a time to fulfill every nerd's dream of opening a bookstore where I got to highlight those important stories from marginalized communities, then I should do it. And so the timing made sense in that moment, and so I just took the leap. I didn't know anything, but I took the leap, and now here we are.
And you did a GoFundMe, which is so interesting, and you raised how much? Was it?
So most of the store was self-funded. I am really fortunate that I had gotten a really substantial book deal.
Oh yeah, we'll hear about that. Yeah, like 7-figure book deal, folks. Yeah. That helped her to open up this bookstore. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was like, so shout out to the mouse over at Disney for helping me cover a lot of the costs. But we raised somewhere in the neighborhood of $15,000 in 24 hours after we announced the store. And I think it just shows that there were so many people who were hungry for a bookstore like that, and also people who were wondering how they could be involved, what they could do to help combat book bans, and so they just leapt on the opportunity.
And so do you mail the books out? So I guess mail order is one way.
We do. So we have a brick and mortar store in Indianapolis, but we also do all of our own fulfillment. So people can go to loudmouthindy.com and we ship all over the contiguous U.S.
Oh, loudmouthindy.com. It's so great. Well, when you say that your books will be pulled off the shelves, it's because you're queer. You write about young girls who are discovering their identity and writing about it extremely well, because you're winding up on Time's list of best books ever written. You know,
Something like that.
Which is quite that's really a good accomplishment to put on your. I don't know whether they send you a trophy with that at home either, but
they don't. They didn't even send me the magazine. So.
So anyway, tell us about that award, that selection, and the books that are engaged in, in that kind of honoring.
Yeah, I mean, to speak to the banned books for a second, I mean, almost half of all the books that are banned in the United States are banned on the basis of stories about queerness or stories about race. And so because I exist at that intersection of writing about race and gender and sexuality, my books often have been the subject of conversations about whether or not they're appropriate for children. And so when I got the honor of You Should See Me in a Crown being named as one of the 100 best YA novels of all time, it was not only shocking because it wasn't something that I was looking for or expecting, but it's also surprising because I know how much pushback these books, not only mine, but books like mine, have received. And so to know that there is somebody out there who's like, this book is important enough for us to honor it in this way, is something that really has been a boon to me in moments where I'm like, are the books reaching the people they need to reach?
So that we can honor the gender diversity that exists in our country. We can order books from you.
Yes.
And these are the one. Have you gotten any pushback at all? I'm as a grandmother. I'm worried about what the next 4 years will be like for you.
Yeah, I mean, And you know this as well as I do, that there has never been a time in this country where Black folks have not been under siege, where queer folks have not been under siege. And so this is nothing new. We have survived worse with less resources. But it is really troublesome and worrisome to me that we are back in this position when it feels like we should be moving forward, right? And so I am always thinking about how stories can act as mirrors that reflect our experiences, but also windows into experiences that are unlike our own. So I come from Indianapolis, which is not the most racially diverse city in America. And my hope is that in writing about queer Black Midwestern girlhood, which is very specific, that people who are my neighbors who maybe don't understand all those intersections can begin to see the humanity in these characters, begin to see that we are more alike than we are different. And hopefully, you know, these stories act as a way for us to bridge those gaps between each other, which feels a little idealistic, but I have to believe that stories can do that.
So tell us about You Should See Me in a Crown.
Yeah, so I got really fortunate that at the beginning of my career, I wrote a book called You Should See Me in a Crown, which is about a girl named Liz Leidy, who is growing up in a small-minded Midwestern town, and she just wants to get out and go to college. And so she runs for prom queen for the scholarship that's attached to the crown, and she falls for her competition for queen. This was a book that I did not anticipate was going to take off in the way that it did, because there hadn't really been a precedent up until that point for, you know, queer Black girl rom-coms in traditional publishing.
I love that. I love stringing those words together.
I was like, let's just make sure we're hitting all of our beats. You know what I mean? Queer Black girl rom-com. Yeah, all the above.
Right.
And so because we hadn't really seen that happen, when You Should See Me in a Crown came out, the expectations, I think, were generally pretty low. I mostly just wanted to write a book that showed that there was a path forward for me as I was trying to navigate my own coming out in my real life. And so the book came out and it just sort of found its audience and has continued to find its audience.
Right, and it was actually selected as for a Pride Month at Target, or which is extraordinary, with that kind of reach and all. Do we have a clip that we can show with Leah Johnson being profiled?
When I was a kid, we didn't have a lot of stories where queer Black girls got crowned queens and told that we're worthy. So I wrote that story. You Should See Me in a Crown is for young Black girls who deserve all the happy endings in the world. All the things that people tell you to be afraid of about yourself, you gotta hold on to those things with both hands. There is a big, broad, robust world out there that's waiting for you to be exactly who you are.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And what happened after that? So that book gave you your first big seller.
Yeah.
And all of that fame, best book ever written, ever.
Well, it was pretty good. It was pretty good. So I feel really lucky that other people were like, yeah, it was great. But it opened the door to the rest of my career. I mean, I, of course, wanted to be a writer, but didn't know if it was going to be possible to be a writer that did this full time or wrote books that had the potential to reach wide audiences. I thought that queer stories were relegated to a really niche readership. And what I've seen in my own books, but of course in so many queer books, which the number has grown exponentially over the last couple of years, has been that it's not a niche market for these stories. Everybody can connect to the narratives at the heart of the novels that I'm writing. And that has been so heartening for me to see, just like as a writer. And so I started with You Should See Me in a Crown, but people just keep letting me write these stories. So I'm just going to keep doing it.
And the next book was?
It was called Rise to the Sun,
right,
which was about two girls who fall in love at a music festival. One of them is dealing with these feelings of grief and doesn't know how she's going to carry on. And the other is dealing with these feelings of isolation and alienation. And so they would find each other at this music festival, and music brings them together, but it also shows them a way forward.
Great. And now the Disney deal. I mean, it says 7 figures. Can you tell us what figures those are?
Well, as soon as you hit the 7, that was the one. That was where they took it. Yeah, I mean, like I said, publishing is risk averse, and I think that's the case for most industries. And so it's rare that publishers will take a huge chance on books that they haven't necessarily seen do really well already. And so I wrote Ellie when I was still living in my parents' house during the pandemic. I had like moved back home and thought I was going to be there for a couple of weeks and ended up being there for months on end. And Ellie was a way for me to escape into this world of fantasy where Black girls got to get superpowers and change the world, but really just change themselves in the process. And so Ellie ended up being really successful in that Disney picked it up, and it has since opened up a new era of my career where I get to write for middle grade readers.
So you're writing for older readers now, but is this like a movie? I mean, it seems like it's perfect material for a series.
It would be. Whoever's listening, where's my camera? Whoever's listening, no, we're really fortunate that Ellie has received a lot of attention and interest from producers, and so we're trying to find the right fit for who could develop it for screen. But I have my fingers crossed.
Well, I love it. I love that the whole idea of it. Now, you started writing when you were in 5th grade. Do I have that right?
Thereabouts,
Okay.
yeah.
And some teacher said you might have a talent, or
maybe I had a talent and maybe she just needed something to shut me up because I was talking too much in class. But shout out to Miss Peacock, who is my 5th and 6th grade teacher. And she was one of the first teachers that I had that really encouraged the kind of curiosity that I had. I wasn't good at math, I wasn't good at science, but I was really good at being the class clown.
Right.
And I was good at telling stories, which I didn't always tell at the most appropriate times. And so, of course, she was like, girl, pick up a notebook and a pen and get to writing.
Right, so that was Indianapolis, your hometown, and then you went off after Mrs. Peacock encouraged your writing. You got into Sarah Lawrence, and you were saying just before we started the difference between Indianapolis and Sarah Lawrence was big.
Yeah, it's huge. So I did my undergraduate studies at Indiana University and then went to Sarah Lawrence for grad school. And I had thought that I was going to be a journalist. And around 2015, I was getting ready to graduate. I had a job lined up after graduation. And that was also the era where we were seeing a lot of police brutality around the country. We were seeing these stories being proliferated about the harm that was perpetuated against Black folks. And so as the only Black person in the newsroom, often I was the one who was asked to write these stories. And I was talking about police violence all the time.
Right.
And so I thought, I want to tell stories, of course, and I want to tell stories about my community, but I also want to tell stories about the joy and the beauty of that community. And so I went to Sarah Lawrence for fiction writing so that I could figure out how to cultivate and curate those kind of stories.
But in your journalism spell, you were an intern at the Wall Street Journal, or someplace like that. Wow, that was. So tell us about that. I mean, I know that you backed away from it. I've seen enough of this. Let me go to the
gone as far as I can go in this
world, right?
Right. I mean, I was really fortunate that I was a part of a fellowship through the CUNY Graduate School of Journalism.
Whoa, CUNY,
right? Shout out.
Our family.
Yeah, and so the first time I got to come to New York was with that fellowship, and so I spent a summer working for the Wall Street Journal and also, taking classes at the J School, and that experience taught me so much about what it means to tell good stories, but it also taught me about the fortitude required to do that every single day of your life. I was like,
tell me about it. Tell me about it. I did it every single day for 25 years.
Listen, I said, you know what? I need to be playing pretend. I need to grab my laptop and write my gay little fantasies. And so that's what I did. I said, I got to leave the heavy reporting. I don't know.
I like the path you took, but in reading your bio, it says that you were living in Brooklyn, as every other wanting to be writer does.
Right. I was a starving artist in Brooklyn like everybody else. And I thought, genuinely for a long time, I thought that the only way I could be a writer professionally was to escape. We have this narrative of people who live in middle America as like needing to get away in order to like achieve their dreams or live a big life or whatever that means. And so for me, I thought that getting to New York was the ultimate goal. I could only be a writer if I got to New York. And I got here and I was always writing about home. And I realized that sometimes you have to leave a place in order to learn to love it. And that's what it took. I moved to Brooklyn and I did my thing, and I realized that at my core, I'm always going to be a Midwestern girl. And so if I'm going to write about these communities and all the ways that I want to see them change, I should maybe go back there and be part of that change.
Go back there, buy a house, open a bookstore, write
Adopt
your
some dogs,
stories,
right?
got your
Do the
dog.
whole thing.
I love it. And now tell us about Kwame, the arrangement that you have.
Yeah, so Kwame is the publisher. He founded this imprint under Disney called Freedom Fire, and Freedom Fire is all about Black joy, Black resilience, Black storytelling. And we got to be a part of this first season of titles. Black Girl Power is a title that is a play on Kwame's book, Black Boy Joy, which came out years ago, but was so wildly successful and so deeply impactful that he wanted to see us build on that. And so I was able to be the editor of that anthology under Freedom Fire.
And so tell us, you have 15 stories that are written by women who are reflecting back on perhaps on their own childhoods or creating stories. So
Right. So Black Girl Power is 15 stories and poems by 15 Black women authors who are all coming at this from different angles. We have some fantasy writers, some speculative fiction writers, some that do contemporary, and all of us came together to under this theme of reminding Black girls that whoever they are, whatever they are, and whatever they want to be, that they are inherently powerful. They don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be without flaw, and they still have the same power.
Renee Watson is among those. I know several of your heroes, right? Your queens are included. Renee has been a guest multiple times here. We adore her as well, and she has a poem. If I could get you to read a little bit, it's a great poem that I think goes to the heart of what we're talking about on this program and what you're doing in all of the work that you do.
I would love to. I'm going to say it before I start reading.
Yes.
I'm no Renee Watson, but I'm going to do my best. Renee, I love you. I love you. All right. It's called Black Girl B. Be, Black girl, be. Be as in exist. Exist as in take up space with the fullness of your body, with the bellowing of your laugh. Be queen of double dutch on the playground, beads banging and knocking all over your head, braids swinging low like the sweet chariot your ancestors sang about. Be, Black girl, be. Be red Kool-Aid and red velvet cake. Be setting sun and the tickle from a cool breeze. Be like the giggles that explode from your belly when you can't stop laughing. Be the girl who never hides her smile, never holds back her tears. Be, Black girl, be.
That is fantastic. And now you, in terms of this, young movement of unapologetic young women. I was going to say girls, of course, but young women.
Right. The girls we once were, I think.
The girls who once were.
Yeah, I feel really lucky. I mean, I know this is maybe trite, but I really believe that I stand on the shoulders of giants. And there have been so many Black women who wrote books for young people, specifically young Black girls, for many, many years, and were not given the platforms and the support and the space to talk about it in the way that I am now. And I'm only able to be here sitting in this chair because of Sharon Flake, because of Sharon Draper, because of the Renee Watsons and the Danielle Claytons and the Evie Zaboys who published before I got here. And so many of them were writers that I was reading before I knew that it was possible to be a writer. And so this is a real full circle moment. And it's exciting that it's happened relatively early in my career.
I would say very early in your career, relatively.
Like, hopefully I have some years left on it.
I think so. And when you approached them, what was their response? How did you make the choices of who would be included? Did you say?
You know, I thought about it in like two different categories. I was like, who are the friends that I haven't been able to work with yet who I really want to be able to work with? Because you got to spend years developing a project together. So I was like, who are the friends that I know that I want to work with? And who are the legends that I'm like, I would give my left foot if it meant I could just like touch the hem of your garment for a second. And so with some of the folks who were in this anthology, I was able to just text them and be like, hey, I got an idea. You want to do this? And with some of the writers, like the Sharons, for instance, I was like, can somebody who can convince them to do it, can you reach out to them? Because I don't know if I can even talk to them. But everybody was so gracious with their time and their energy and their ideas, and they were so enthusiastic about the project that it didn't even take that much convincing, which was great.
So the book is Black Girl Power. I want to get your response. We just have been through an election in this country where the black girl didn't win.
Right.
Your response and what you're picking up in terms of black girls everywhere. How are they taking this?
Yeah, before I started my tour, I was really concerned with how I was going to go into these schools and look these black girls in their face and tell them that everything was going to be okay when I struggle occasionally to believe that that's the case. I mean, again, historically, black women have been the backbone of this country and have very scarcely been rewarded for the hard work that they put forth. And I know that it is easy to give in to despair when you know that to be the case. But I also know that despair, hopelessness, is a tool of the oppressor. And so if I have the opportunity to talk to black girls who are wondering how we keep going the way we always have, because being in community with each other is the most powerful thing we can do. The collective is the most strength we have, is when it's together. And so folks want us to believe that our voices don't matter. They want us to believe that our harnessed power together doesn't amount to anything. And I don't believe that's the case. And so we have to keep showing up for each other every day, even when it looks like we can't quite break that ceiling.
And do you sense it when you're with girls? What have they said to you? What do they say to you?
Well, I get asked a lot of questions about how I keep going. I did a school visit here in the city this morning up in the Bronx, and one of the students was like, well, people must tell you all the time that you shouldn't be doing this. Like, how do you keep going when they tell you that? And I keep going, one, because it's my job, and I like being able to pay my mortgage, but two, because if I don't keep going, what does that tell the generation that comes up after me? The women that came before me had to face off against so many more obstacles. They weren't having the support from their publishers. They struggled to get agents. They struggled to put these books out oftentimes. And if I give up in the conditions that I'm in, what signal am I giving to the next generation of writers? If they could keep going, then I have an obligation to them who sacrificed so much for me to keep going as well.
And so having a bookstore where you are selling the banned books, tell us about the future of that. I mean, are you expecting, some sort of trouble? I hate to be the one to raise the issue, but...
Yeah, well, I'm always on guard. Know that. I'm always ready, because whether I bring the fight to them or they bring it to me, there's always going to be a bumping of heads. And so we're prepared. My mom is a state representative in the town where I grew up, and so I'm often talking to her about legislation that's coming out, the ways I can be of service. And so I do think it's going to be a hard 4 years, and I think that we are going to have to double and triple down on all the things that matter to us.
And the LGBTQ trans community especially,
Absolutely.
seems to be in the bullseye.
Absolutely. And I think trans stories, stories about gender expansive people, are going to continue to come under fire. And so as a queer person who is not a part of the trans community, there's not my job to speak on their behalf, but I hope that, through the bookstore, through anthologies, through the work that I'm doing in these other avenues, I'm able to help, amplify that part of the queer experience in some way. And in general, even when I can't amplify, just be a sounding board for those ideas.
Right, right. How did you come out to your family? And what?
That's a great question. I came out to my mom in a Dallas barbecue in Times Square.
Here in the
Yeah, I came out to her here in the city.
Right.
Yeah, not far from here, actually. I had just announced You Should See Me in a Crown. I wrote that book, and my mom didn't know that I was queer. And the book had just been announced in Publishers Weekly, and my mom surprised me by flying to New York to celebrate with me. And I realized when I watched her want to celebrate with me and want to honor the achievement of this book that I had a responsibility to myself in that moment to live without shame. And part of that was telling my mom, hey, I maybe am not the daughter you thought that I was, but I'm still your daughter nonetheless.
And her response?
Her response was, well, why didn't you tell me? There's nothing you could do that would ever make me love you any less. And so, of course, I'm crying into my chicken wings at the Dallas barbecue. But she was so solid and supportive about it from the jump. So.
Oh, that's wonderful. And before we leave, I want you to come back, because you're just so charming and so productive. You've done so much, What can we expect next from you?
Well, you can expect that I'm about to go home and take a nap after this tour is over. In March, my next middle grade novel, which is called Bree Boyd is a Legend, is the second book in the Ellie Engel series, will be out. And then in December of next year, I have a rom-com co-written with my friend Leah Johnson called There's Always Next Year. And it's going to be so fun and so holiday-ish. And so I hope everybody will pick it up.
Okay, great. I love seeing a young person having a full year planned out. I mean, well, the sketch of it, who knows what else is going to happen.
Right. I was like, we got a long way down, so we got to be ready.
Leah Johnson, thanks so much for being with us today. It's just an absolute joy. She's the award-winning author and editor of Black Girl Power. Be sure to pick it up for all of your kids, now released. Thank you so much for being our guest today, and thanks for joining us today. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America. We'll see you the next time. And now you can download the CUNY TV app in your Apple Store or in Google Play and find us there.